Yeah, let's get started.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Eric Zhu, and I'm a sophomore from Princeton High School. Tonight, we have invited Ethan Huang, who is a freshman from Stanford, to join us to share his growth experiences and his college application process with us. Ethan was the valedictorian at his high school and was accepted by all schools that he applied to, including Stanford, the UC system, and a scholarship from USC. Besides his rigorous course load, perfect test scores, Ethan was also a veteran Taekwondo player and has won many state and national championships. Ethan is also the founder of Just Talk, a nonprofit organization, the president of EDH Mathletes, and also volunteered as a Taekwondo instructor. His excellence in many fields led to his success in the college application process. Tonight, he will share how he handled pressure, overcame his challenges, and made himself shine during the application process. While Ethan is giving his presentation, I would like to ask everybody to put themselves on mute. And if you have any questions for Ethan, please send them over in WeChat. Welcome, Ethan.
All right. Thank you very much, Eric. All right. So hello, everyone. Welcome tonight. I just wanted to say thank you for the Full School for inviting me to speak to everyone here about my story and my journey to college. So now, before we begin, I would like to say officially that this presentation isn't affiliated with, associated, or authorized by Stanford University. It's just my personal experience and my personal experiences in this application process and everything that I've learned up to now that I wanted to share with you all. So in terms of qualifications and profile, Eric already mentioned pretty much the basics of it, but I'll give you another quick rundown. In terms of academics, I had a 4.78 GPA. In high school, I took 15 AP courses. I was a valedictorian in high school. I was a national AP scholar and national merit finalist. In terms of testing, like standardized testing, SAT, ACT stuff, I received a 35 on the ACT, 1550 on the SAT, 750 on my biology subject test, 800 on my math 2 subject test. And in terms of accepted schools, I was accepted to Stanford during their early action program. I was accepted to USC as their full scholarship nominee. And in addition to those, we have these UCs right here. UC Berkeley, LA, Santa Barbara, San Diego, Irvine, Davis, and Santa Cruz. Most of these schools are accepted into the Regents program, and in addition to honors and early acceptance. So those were pretty much my main statistics for in terms of academics and testing. In terms of athletics, Eric mentioned that I was a 2-time national Taekwondo team member and a bronze medalist at the World Taekwondo Championships in 2016. And in terms of community service, I founded Just Talk, which is a nonprofit English tutoring organization. I was a Taekwondo instructor. I was president of the EDH Mathletes, which is also a nonprofit local math tutoring organization. And I was also involved in other school organizations, such as my school's Student Coalition Against Cancer and many honor societies. And lastly, just some other things. I was a part-time waiter at my family's restaurant and also an amateur web designer. I just did fun little projects on the side. All right, great. So that was just a little bit about me and kind of like my background, like on the surface, kind of what I did. Now, in terms of what we're going to be talking about today, we have 6 main topics that'll kind of like summarize everything. So first is taking everything in context and kind of just acknowledging differences in everyone's goals and setting ourselves up for our paths to success. Whether you are a parent of a student or you're a student who's watching this right now, everyone's goals are going to be different. So the person who's like all the people in this video call right now, we're gonna have different goals, whether it's for your child or for yourself, right? So everyone's gonna be different, and I'm going to be talking a little bit to that. In terms of academic rigor, which means like how hard my classes should be, should you push yourself, should you take it easy 1 year, how many APs or IB courses should you take, stuff like that. We will be discussing that a little bit more, and I'll give kind of my personal insight on what how I approached choosing classes and taking classes. Now, in terms of standardized testing, there is the SAT or the ACT. I'm not going to talk about this too much because it's a little more technical, but definitely I'll still explain how I approach this process. In terms of extracurriculars, I'll also explain how I got into what I did. So like Taekwondo, Just Talk. I'll talk about what made me interested in these two things, and then kind of like how I recommend that you approach something like this. And I'll talk a little bit more on essays as well for those students who are a little bit older, already getting into that application process. I'll talk about essays and kind of like what I would do differently if I was writing the essays now, and how I would approach them as a student who is applying to colleges in the near future. And lastly, of course, I'll be talking about planning ahead and utilizing all the resources that you have, and looking towards the future and towards college. Like one of the resources you have is attending seminars, webinars like these. So you're already one step ahead of many other people. So yeah, so just planning ahead and taking a look at that. All right. Fantastic. Okay, so those are the main discussion topics. So we can go ahead and get right on into it. First off, we're going to be taking everything in context. So what does that mean, right? Talking about how we are all different and how we should kind of embrace it. So when we're talking about taking everything in context, you're first looking at goals, right? In the United States, there are thousands of institutions for higher level education, whether that be a community college, a vocational or trade school, a four-year university, or whatever it may be where you're trying to further your education. There are thousands of pathways that can take you to there. But today we're going to be, so thousands of paths for you to get there. And your plan is going to be different than everyone else, right? So scores, extracurriculars, and everything else will be tailored to your story and how you want to further your own education. You're not going to follow anyone else's path, right? And our focus today is going to be on four-year universities because that's kind of the path that I took, and I'm going to be sharing my experiences on that. If you have a slightly different path, that's okay. Take my advice and maybe you can apply it to your own way of thinking later down the line, okay? Now, just some things to remember as we go through. I really don't want people to focus on like the prestige of colleges. What that means is don't choose a school just because it sounds good. Even if you think, oh, I want to go to Harvard, ask yourself, why do you want to go to Harvard? Or if you want to go to Stanford, ask yourself, why do you want to go to Stanford? Are you going there, or are you applying there because the name is great and like people know what Stanford, what Harvard is? Or is it because you're going there because you want to learn something specifically that the school has to offer? Is it some specific program that they offer? Is it a specific major? Is it the culture of the school? Ask yourselves those questions before you say, oh, this is my dream school, right? So don't focus on the prestige. Of course, name brand is very important in the future, but also think about what you want to get out of it, not just the prestige, okay? So again, we are looking for fit. Like, how will you fit into the college, right? Is it going to be, oh, I'm fitting in because of the culture of the college, everything actually fits into your profile, or are you going and then not fitting in, right? So building off of that, when you're actually thinking about building your application and eventually actually writing your application, be genuine. Don't do anything or say anything that isn't representative of who you are. You don't have to fake who you are. If you have to fake who you are, then the school that you're going to or applying to probably isn't right for you. All right, so just a little bit before we go into a few quick case studies, let me just tell you a little bit about kind of my journey and how I chose to go into a four-year university path, right? So starting in about, I would say, middle school, I was always really focused on academics and kind of like not as much extracurriculars. But my parents were always like supportive of me when I wanted to study, when I had to do work in school, right? So I would do that. I would be joining a few clubs in middle school, but also I wasn't really thinking about college, right? as a middle school student, if you don't have anyone to tell you about college, you're probably not going to think about it. So because college is, if you're a sixth grader, that's like 6 years down the line. You're not going to be thinking about that type of stuff. But if you are like the parent of a younger student, or if you are a younger student yourself, then you might be thinking, oh, I'm like, you're in this webinar now, so you're probably ahead of where I was when I was in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. Right? But at that time, I wasn't really thinking about college, and I kind of wish I was thinking about it a little bit more, because I wasn't 100% planning out what I wanted to do. But that's also part of it, like exploration, right? So it's a balance. So going into high school is when I really started to say, oh, what do I want to do with my education, right? So that's when I started looking into, like in freshman year is when I started looking into colleges. That is still like earlier than a lot of other people who might be looking into colleges starting in junior year or senior year. So I was still a little bit early, but I would recommend you start maybe in 8th grade if you can. So I just started looking into what classes I wanted to take and what I wanted to get out of my education in the future. So I started to put together like extracurriculars, academics, just to build towards a 4-year university, because after a lot of research, I found that 4-year university would get me to where I want to be, like in terms of career and education at the end of my journey. All right, so I wanted to go to college in order to be able to maybe go to grad school, and I wanted to come to a 4-year university to really explore my true passions and interests. So a 4-year university would offer me the flexibility to do that probably another path wouldn't allow me to. So that's kind of why I kind of set my sights on a 4-year university. In terms of everything else, I'll go deeper into like extracurriculars, activities, academics on later slides, but that's just kind of what I am, that's just a general context. Okay, great. Now, moving on, we're going to talk about a few case studies. I'll just go through this one case study right here, just to show you what colleges are kind of looking at when they're looking at applications, and kind of what they were looking at when they were looking at me. All right, so when I'm looking at this profile, it's a male from a suburban private school. All right, so a couple of things that an admission officer might notice if they're looking at your file is you're attending one of the top schools in the state. By attending a top school or a highly ranked school, then you might be with more competitive people in a stronger academic environment. Of course, that's not always true, but that's one of the things that will be seen. There are high SAT math scores as well. Math 2 scores and Bio M scores, 760, both very good scores. And now, when we're looking at activities, here's where I really want to point out what admissions officers notice. So we're looking at the Earth Corps, right? You're involved from grade 9 to grade 12, president in grade 11 of the Environmental Service Club. So this part right here shows dedication over a long period of time. So from 9th grade to 12th grade, this person was dedicated to a certain activity, including Earth Corps and Asian Pacific Student Club. So dedication over a long period of time, colleges like to see. So if you start something in freshman year that you really enjoy, then maybe going throughout freshman year through the senior year, showing your dedication is really important. And in terms of leadership is where the president role comes in. So president in 11th grade for Earth Corps and president in 12th grade for Asian Pacific Student Club. So both of these are showing leadership and character in your school's like organizations. This leadership is also a really important aspect of like a college application if you are interested in leadership. If you're not interested in leadership, then maybe you could take a slightly lower role, such as maybe a treasurer, an officer of another position, but also show you're actively involved to try to get deeper into an organization, right? All right, and that should be the main one on that case study. So the biggest thing I wanted to point out in this case study was that if you're going to be committed to an activity, try to commit over a long period of time and show some like deeper level interest, like maybe demonstrating that you're an officer in the club, maybe you're you're part of the leadership team of that club. Whatever the case is, make sure you're just showing dedication to something that you enjoy, and don't just hop around, try a bunch of different clubs, right? And then just like not be committed in a very deep level to any of them. Okay, great. Now we're going to skip these two other case studies. They're very similar to case study 1. It's just also highlighting the fact that you need dedication and leadership, right? Okay. Now, in terms of academics, is where we're going to shift our focus to now. I'm going to first kind of give an overview of academics, and then I'll talk a little bit more about myself and how I approach that. All right. So, what do colleges look for? So I'll ask a couple questions here. What classes are you taking compared to other students from your school who applied to the same college? Right. So that probably starts in about freshman year through your senior year. What classes are you taking compared to other people? Did you challenge yourself? Are the classes you've taken relevant to what you're going to study in college? How are your grades? And how are your grades? Right. So those are some pretty basic but big questions that colleges are going to be asking. So now, comparisons to peer applicants. Quick example, take Bob here. He has an average course rigor, which means that he is taking 2 APs, 2 honors courses, and 2 regular courses, and he's attained 3 A's and 3 B's. So let's say Bob is applying to a certain school, certain college, and he is applying with these stats, right? He would be, at this school, they consider him an average course rigor. But someone who's below average may be taking no APs, 1 honors course, 5 regular course with 2 A's and 4 B's, right? So someone from that, from your school applying to that college, this is a below average course rigor. Now, above average course rigor, 4 APs, 2 honors, 0 regular courses with 5 A's and a B, that would give you a better chance when applying to a college. So what this essentially means is that if you're applying to a college and they consider you having average course rigor, as shown here, then you'll probably have a decent chance of being accepted. But if you have a below average course rigor, then you probably have a less chance of getting accepted. Above average is opposite, you'll probably have a greater chance of becoming accepted. And what I want everyone here to know is that course rigor does vary from school to school. So depending on what college you're applying to, they might have a different view on your course rigor. And in terms of your high school, you might have different course rigor because your school might not offer as many APs or as many honors courses, and it just depends on your school. So take this with a grain of salt. These are just stats that I made up. So but this is kind of what colleges look like when they're comparing you to other applicants. All right, now challenging yourself. You have to challenge yourself every day. This is what I told myself a lot going through my high school experience, right? So going through high school, I was always asking myself if I was actually learning, right? If I wasn't actually learning, then what was the point of going to school? I had to challenge myself every day, taking slightly harder classes, maybe taking another AP, taking an AP that other people would say were harder, right? So whatever the case was, right, I was trying to challenge myself each day. I couldn't just sit back and say, oh, I'm taking these courses, it's whatever. Just breeze through high school, right? I'm challenging myself, not because it's easy, but because it's more rewarding at the end. So going along with that, doing the bare minimum requirements is not enough. What that means is if you complete your high school graduation recommendations or requirements, or you maintain a minimum college GPA to get into a school, oftentimes that isn't enough to actually get you into a school when you're applying. You have to go above and beyond. So that again goes back to challenging yourself, right? Challenge yourself and eventually you'll meet requirements and exceed requirements that are going to require you to get into college in the end. Okay? Now, but here's the bad thing. If when classes become too easy, that means you're not learning, and that's what and colleges can see that. So when classes become too easy, or if they become too easy, try to push yourself to take that next step, right? But also, please find a balance between hard classes and easy classes. Don't push yourself too much where you're challenging yourself too. You can't keep up with classes, but also don't become too laid back when you take classes. Okay, right. It's always up to the individual person. All right. So yeah, so don't overload yourself The key is to find balance and manage your time wisely. This was the biggest thing that I learned about throughout my time as a middle school and high school student. I learned how to find balance and use time management skills. Like use a planner, balance like my social life with my academic life and my extracurricular life. Just planning everything out, using a calendar, and then just making sure I work efficiently. Because I was balancing a lot of at least 3 hours of extracurriculars a day. I was balancing studying for many academic courses and a lot of other extracurriculars that I just didn't have, I wouldn't have time for if I didn't make sure I planned everything out. So in the future, I just recommend taking a couple minutes out of your day to plan out the next, plan out what you're going to do, and then work efficiently during those times. Right? Don't get lazy and procrastinate and wait till last minute deadlines. Get ahead, get started early. Now, going back to classes should be difficult enough that you have to spend time on it, but not so hard that it takes away from other aspects of your life. So what I meant was back when I was saying social life, extracurriculars, spending time with your friends, right? Classes should be pushing you, but they shouldn't be forcing you to step back away from your friends, away from your extracurricular activities. Now, relevance of classes. In terms of relevance of classes and towards a potential major that you might be majoring in college, relevance of classes is generally not too major or too important to colleges, but for certain programs and majors, some classes might be necessary. So you just have to look at a college's specific requirements for each program. So for example, I was looking at a lot of 8-year and accelerated medical school programs. I eventually did not apply to any of these, but doing research about these programs, I saw that many of them suggested physics courses, chemistry courses, and biology courses that you had to take, right? So if you didn't take these courses, then you couldn't apply and you're kind of out of luck. So make sure to do your research about specific programs beforehand in order to see, oh, I might need to take a physics course my freshman year, chemistry course my sophomore year, biology courses my junior year, something like that. It's just to make sure you tick all the boxes. Okay? Just one more example, maybe for top tier engineering programs. I know a lot of my friends apply to these top tier engineering programs and they specifically require physics. So if they did not take physics, then they're they couldn't apply. So just physics classes, just make sure, once again, research whatever programs you might be interested in so you can set yourself on a path to succeed in the future. And just a little pro tip, anytime a college says that something is suggested, always take that as required. Let's say they suggest you take a SAT subject test, which is a course-specific, a subject-specific test. If they suggest that, you should probably take it because odds are someone else out there is taking that test. And if they're an equally qualified applicant, maybe a college will take that student over you just because you didn't do a suggested requirement. Okay, great. Okay, now how do you choose the right classes and how did I choose the classes that I took? So first, I did a lot of talking with my school counselor. They know everything there is to know about the courses at your school, how hard they are, and how hard you should push yourself. So I talked with my school counselor a lot personally in order to just choose what classes I wanted to take and know how hard to push myself. I also talked a lot with the teachers that were teaching the courses, right? The teachers themselves are teaching the courses. So in order to gauge how hard a class is, talk to the teachers. If you talk to the teachers, you'll get an idea of how hard a class is and their teaching style. Maybe you like a teacher's personality and they'll convey information better to you. So you have to personally go talk to the teachers and see whether or not you might enjoy the class. Also, talk with other students who have taken the class before. If they've taken the class before, they know as a student how it feels, how hard it is, and whether or not they think or you think you're ready to take that course. So out of these three, talk to your counselor, talk to teachers, and talk with other students, and you should be setting yourself up on a path to choosing the right class. Now, a couple other big important things are, is the subject interesting to you? If you're debating between two classes that you want to take, and one of them is super interesting, other one isn't, I recommend that you pursue the more interesting class, because if you pursue that class, you'll probably do much better because you're willing to put in the time and effort to learn about a subject that's interesting to you. Getting something out of the class is more important than maybe saying taking a class that you're not interested in at all and taking nothing from it in the future. Okay. And don't be afraid to try out a class or two that seems challenging, right? Oftentimes when I was trying to choose courses, I would be talking to people like, oh, this is too hard. Is this like too much for me? But what I realized was if I didn't try something out and I didn't push myself, then I would never really know what I was capable of, right? So I enrolled in a lot of like AP courses, like AP chemistry, AP biology, that I might thought, oh, maybe these classes are kind of hard, but took them, actually ended up really enjoying some of them. So don't be afraid to try out these classes and just test out the waters. All right, so that was just kind of the basics on academic rigor, choosing classes. Definitely like choosing classes is a really important part, but just take that advice in mind and kind of like learn from my experience and just go talk with people. And then you'll realize that choosing classes is not that hard and should almost be like a fun thing. Okay. Good. Now let's move on to standardized testing. I won't be talking too much on the technical aspect of standardized testing because a lot of this information you could just find online. But I will be talking a little bit more about my personal experience with standardized testing and how I approached it. Okay, so I'll quickly go over the basics if you're not really familiar with standardized testing. There are two main tests, the SAT and the ACT. The SAT is scored on a 400 to 1600 scale, 1600 being the best. The ACT score is scored on a 1 to 36 scale, with 36 being the best. So when you're looking at these two tests, colleges do consider these two exams equally. And there's not an easier test and only one that fits your style better. So when applying to colleges, I ended up only submitting my ACT score, not my SAT score. And I did slightly better, like relatively, on my ACT than my SAT, which is why I submitted the ACT. There isn't an easier test and only one that fits your style better. And what this means is that when I was taking it, I just found the ACT to be relatively easier for me. And you can kind of only learn that from personal experience. I'll go a little bit deeper into that later, but keep that in mind. And standardized tests are not the deciding factor in most admissions processes. Like they'll take SAT, ACT scores into consideration, but it won't be the only thing that gets you into college. All right, you'll have good grades, good extracurriculars, good essays, all of that factoring in. Okay, so how do colleges kind of use the SAT and ACT? And well, this kind of really depends on the college. If you're looking at a California State University or a CSU, they rely heavily on standardized tests. Passing a CSU's score threshold, let's say they require a 1200 on the SAT for guaranteed admission, then or a very high chance of admission. If you pass that, then you have a good chance of getting in. However, if you look at holistic admissions processes, such as those at many private schools like Stanford, Harvard, or UCs, they focus less on standardized testing and focus more on your grades, your extracurriculars, your essays, and all that, okay? So don't think of your SAT, ACT as end-all, be-all of a holistic admission process. And once again, these institutions use the SAT and ACT as benchmarks. Once you pass this like benchmark, the rest of your profile is taken a look at. So once you pass like, for many schools, like top tier schools such as Stanford or Harvard, MIT, Princeton, or other Ivy Leagues, if you look at them, they'll say, okay, once they pass like that 1480, 1500 score on the SAT, or if they pass like about a 32 on the ACT, then really there's not that much difference. And they're really looking at your rest of your profile to differentiate you from other students. So a lot of you might be wondering kind of what a good SAT or ACT score is, right? Well, okay, yeah, sorry. To tell you the truth, this kind of, again, depends on the college, right? So in order to determine a good SAT or ACT score, what I and like a lot of other people do is you look at the middle 50% of a college accepted scores. 25% is the absolute minimum, and 75th gives you a much better chance at admission. So what this means is, if you look at UCLA, for example, the middle 50% goes from 31 to 31st for the ACT, and 1360 to 1540 for the SAT. So when I was applying and I was kind of like taking my tests, I knew that if I got around a 35 on the ACT, then I'll have a very strong chance at admission, and a 1540 on the SAT would give me a strong chance for admission at UCLA. So if you're looking at this, this is kind of a good gauge to how to approach target scores, right? You don't need to get a perfect 36. You don't need to get a perfect 1600 on the SAT. You just need to get kind of to that threshold, and the rest of your application will sort of follow. And I'm going to skip over like skip over most of this technical stuff, the cost and stuff. But in general, the SAT is longer and more thought is required for the questions, and you get more time for fewer questions. So, and the ACT questions are simpler, but it's faster paced and less time with more questions. So depending on your test taking ability, one of them might be better for you. If you like taking a little bit longer and kind of thinking about questions and like having fewer questions, the SAT might be better for you, and you just have to try it out. ACT, yeah, if you're better at working faster and like a few like simpler questions, that one might be better for you. But at the end, you really just have to try out the test yourself and see which one works best for you. In terms of studying for these tests, I really recommend starting early. I started pretty early when studying for these, probably like probably like sophomore year. I would probably, if I was back in like your shoes applying now, I'd probably try to start freshman year and building my way up. Just taking practice tests, looking at some sample problems, not like taking like specific courses or whatever, but just kind of start getting into it and taking a look and taking tests in realistic environments. So begin testing in sophomore year if possible. So that's like taking like one SAT or an ACT just to get a feel for what testing is like. Eventually you'll get more and more comfortable with it as you go on. But even if you can't start in sophomore year, starting in junior year is fine as well. So you should try both the SAT and ACT if you can, just to see which one, once again, is better that fits your style. And always review the questions that you missed in order to improve. All right, so that was just a little bit about SAT, ACT. That's a little more technical, so I'm going to start talking about extracurriculars, which is a more personal side of your application and kind of about yourself. Right? So exactly what is an extracurricular? When I was in middle school, extracurriculars were pretty much just like, oh, they're clubs, they're just like little programs that we do after school or like sports or whatever, right? But an extracurricular is really any activity done outside of your normal schooling. This could include athletics, community-based or academic-based activities. Any of these activities like outside of school can be considered an extracurricular if you put in enough time, effort, dedication to show that you really care about it. So a big thing that I was thinking about throughout this entire process and that my parents supported me through as well is you should not do something because it will look good on a college application. A lot of times you might say, you might hear someone say, oh, you should do this program or you should do this club because it'll look good on a college application. But really, I don't believe in that, because if you're doing something for it to look good on a college app, but you don't really enjoy it, what's the point, right? You're not doing something that expresses who you are, and you're not doing something that shows colleges this is what you're interested in. You should do something because you're passionate about it, and not because someone else just told you to do it, or someone else said, oh, or someone else is forcing you to, right? Just do stuff that you're passionate about, and eventually colleges will see that, oh, this is what they're truly passionate about, bam, 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 and sooner or later you're going to see that that will represent you much better than doing something that you're not passionate about. Right. So what do colleges look for in in extracurriculars? Of course, dedication, which is like, as I've said before, about 3 or 4 years in an activity, even more is better. And impact or success. So significant way you've impacted the community through work. So in terms of impact, my English tutoring program, Just Talk, tutors students overseas in like Taiwan and South Korea in English, and just like helping low-income students work their way through and helping them succeed. And colleges might see this as a significant impact on the international community, and that's like a kind of defining term of success when you're looking at that. And of course, in state, national, and international recognition in competitions, whether that be athletic or academic. Personally, I had higher recognition in my athletic endeavors in Taekwondo, multiple time state champion, national champion, international medalist. But you can also be recognized for academics. I know a lot of people here at Stanford are recognized for their high-level academics, like academic competitions, decathlons, and stuff like that. So either way, athletic, academic, or any other competition, if you achieve success in it, you will be recognized somehow, some way. Okay. All right. So what should you do? Well, the biggest thing I would say is to explore your own interests. Everything that I did was based off of my own interests, like Taekwondo, my own interests. Starting and creating Just Talk, my own interests. Tutoring kids in math, local communities, my own interests because I wanted to help, right? So do something, once again, because you're passionate about it. And you should take the time to see what inspires you. All the work that I did and all the athletes and all the people that worked in communities, it really inspired me to do what I did. If you take time on your own to see what inspires you, that will turn out really well for you at the end. And of course, an extracurricular should be enjoyable. Once again, back to the passion portion. It shouldn't be a chore or a task that you're required to complete. Always just take a look at your extracurricular. Say you want to do that, right? Don't just say, oh, I have to do that. Say that you want to do that. All right, yeah. And last thing I would say is just like a little bit more about my personal experience with extracurriculars. I know a lot of people do like music, for example. And that is a passion for a lot of people. A lot of people really enjoy music and like piano, violin, trombone, saxophone, whatever. All of these like instruments, right? A lot of people are really passionate about it. I tried it out in like elementary school and middle school. I was playing piano and the trumpet, both of these. At first I really liked them, but eventually these kind of faded out as like an extracurricular that maybe from time to time I would partake in, but I wouldn't really try to push myself so far into it because I wasn't that interested in it. So that was part of the explore your own interest thing. I was interested in piano at first, but then slowly it started to wane away. And then I was focused on other things that I eventually was truly passionate about. So that take time, see what inspires you, what you really want to do, what you're passionate about. Okay. All right. Now, lastly, before we kind of go into planning ahead and questions, essays, right? So this is more like for the people who are already applying to college or getting ready to apply, right? So there are a lot of different types of essays, but first off, we have what I like to call the big one. The big one is pretty much like the common application or the coalition, and what many people call the personal statement. It is around 500 to 600 words, and it's kind of like what carries your overall theme of your application and demonstrates the most of who you are as a person. So individual college essay or individual colleges might also have a main essay that like is supplemental on top of your personal statement. So I know for like Harvard, they have an individual essay, which is about 650 words, and that you can write about whatever topic you want. That's another supplemental that a college may have. So short essays are about 300 words, and for example, the University of California or UCs have 4 prompts that are 350 words. And for these, it's a little bit shorter, but you can still have enough space to push across what you want, your message. And then short questions about anywhere from 1 to 100 word unique prompts from different schools. For example, at Stanford, at Stanford, there were a lot of 5 to 50 word questions. For example, one of them was, what 5 words best describe you? Right, you could list out 5 words, or you could write a sentence, whatever you want. They're like unique little prompts, and oftentimes they're a little bit more fun to write and a little more interesting. And in terms of approaching these essays, this is where I really want to emphasize a lot of my personal learning experiences. Make sure to give yourself time when starting these essays. I would recommend starting at least the summer before application starts. So let's say the summer of your senior year before you're applying. Take time, because once senior year starts, you're going to be super busy with do all your academic work, extracurriculars, and on top of your college applications. So if you give yourself time, start planning out your essays, that is going to be really beneficial for you in the end. Because I know that by the end of this process, if I was applying, I would really rush trying to finish all my essays. And eventually I did get most of mine done, but I would be much better if I started a little bit earlier, planned out a little bit better before I got into college application season, as they call it. If you do that, then it'll be a lot less stressful on you when you're actually sending in those applications. In terms of planning, make a list, stay organized, and you can reuse ideas from other essays and kind of mix and match depending on if they fit the theme or not. Right. And of course, write what represents you and not what colleges want you to write. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind as you're approaching these essays. This will help you find a better fit at the end and get you into a college that will support you in your academic journey the best that it can. All right, and just some essay tips right here. Write, reread, and revise. You should write first write all of an essay, leave it for a few days before you reread it and then revise it. This is the process I went through multiple times when trying to trying to write my essays, right? I wrote the bulk of it, and then I would reread it and then revise it. I kept doing this until I had an essay that was that I would be proud of turning in. Of course, don't just let anybody read these essays though. Have trusted teachers, family, and friends read your essay and give feedback. And make sure you don't let them write it for you. Make sure you're still getting your own voice across, okay? And lastly, we have just a little bit of time to talk about planning. So when you're talking about what you want to look for in a school, make sure you do your research. So you want to look at their majors or academic focus, whether they have a large or small campus. Look at their school culture, look at their athletic and special academic programs, look at their location, look at their networking opportunities. Focus on what interests you about a school. If you really like it, that's why you should apply to school. Don't apply to a school, once again, because of name or prestige. Okay? So do the research and you'll eventually find a school that fits you the best. And letters of recommendation. Ask teachers to write your letters early. I asked my teachers pretty early, about at least a month or two in advance, so get to give them time to write a quality letter. And remember that teachers can write bad letters. So if you don't give them time, or if you're not on good terms with them, a bad letter can actually hurt your application, and you probably shouldn't ask them if they're going to write you a bad letter. Okay. And last thing before we go on to questions, make sure you have a mix of safety, target, reach, and flip schools. What does that mean? Well, a safety school in my books is what I considered I have at least a 90% chance of admission. So anything where it's almost guaranteed based on my stats, based on my extracurriculars, based on my essays, that I knew I had at least a 90% chance of getting in. Target school, I would say, is anywhere from 50 to 90% chance of admission. And a reach school is 30 to 50, a flip is less than 30. So just having a mix of these schools, so you could have schools that you really dream schools that you don't think you might not get into, but you still have a small chance. Those would be your flip schools. And then just having a mix of those will really diversify your options at the end. And then so I would say make a list of 3 to 5 schools in each category and narrow it down to 12 to 15 to see which ones you really want to apply to. All right, I'm sorry. And everything else, this is just talking about planning. Use a calendar, as I mentioned before. Space out your test taking, your essay writing. And of course, you still have everything else to worry about, extracurriculars, academics. Once you're actually getting into application season, everything is going to be super hectic. And I experienced that myself. So just make sure, give yourself time, use a calendar, and focus on your own like well-being as well. Social life, personal well-being, all super important. So it'll take hard work and time, but you will find a balance and everything will work out. All right. And I just wanted to leave these last like 13, 15 minutes for some questions. Sorry if I rushed at the end, but just, right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ethan. That was a great presentation, and it was very inspiring for all of us. So we have received several questions from the audience, and I'll bring them to you right now. And the first question is, with so many activities, how do you manage your time? How many hours of sleep did you get each night?
All right, so I did do quite a few activities, but the biggest thing about time management was, I said, using my planner, using my calendar to make sure I did everything, making sure I did everything on time, right? What that means was being efficient with all of my work and actually getting things done. I won't get distracted by like my phone, my friends, when I'm actually supposed to be doing work. When I'm supposed to be working, I focus in, lock in, get it done, and then I move on to the next thing on my schedule, whether that be relaxing, hanging out, or more work. I was really focused and intent on getting what I needed to do done. And in terms of sleep, I was actually pretty crazy compared to most high school students. I got a lot of sleep compared to the average like high schoolers. So I'd say about anywhere from probably 6 to 8 hours of sleep, and that's what most people consider a lot in high school. The 6 to 8 hours, usually leaning probably around 7. That's because I had time to I managed my time well, did work efficiently, so I could get sleep and be ready for the next day.
Okay, and our second question is, out of 2 classes, which one would you rather take? And the first class is any class that you can get an A in, and the second class is another like harder class, like AP or honor class, but you can only get a B+ in despite working really hard.
Okay, so depending on yourself, I would personally probably take the harder course because you're pushing yourself to the full potential, right? You're learning and you're getting a lot out of it. If you took an easy A course, sure, you'll get an A, but what are you really getting out of it? You're going to school to learn, not to just simply like get A's, right? I know a lot of people might say, oh, you need perfect scores, perfect whatever to get into college. But the thing is, I was talking to a lot of other students here at Stanford, and the thing that you'll realize not all of them have perfect scores, right? A B+ or a B isn't going to like kill you in the long run, but it might help you learn how to manage your time better. You might learn about something that's really interesting to you because you were pushing yourself. So personally, I would probably take the harder course, but that is definitely up to you, up to your personal situation, kind of like what other classes you might be taking.
Okay, thank you. And the third question is, how do you find your passion and inspiration?
All right, so passion and inspiration, that's just kind of like looking at kind of your surroundings and like fields that you're interested in. Let's say you're interested in a particular sport. Is there anyone near you or near your age that's really good at that sport, that's like really inspiring to you? Maybe they're in an academic field, something like is really interesting. You just kind of have to maybe read about it, find a video about it, find an article about it, whatever, and then kind of do some research into that. And if you're kind of like piquing your interest, then maybe you take a look into how you can get involved in actually doing these things. And eventually you might or may not find something that you're truly passionate about. But in order to do, if you want to find something you're passionate about, just start doing research and then start getting into actually doing those activities, whatever they may be.
Okay, and how much input or influence did your parents have on your college choice and why?
All right. So in terms of college choice, they actually did not have that much input because they knew that I would probably try to make the best decision that would be the best fit for myself. Of course, they had an input. They would throughout the application process, they would give me advice and they're supporting me through whatever decisions I made. But they did give me advice, and I was always very open, very receptive, and took that into consideration. But at the end of the day, it is your education that you know what you want to get out of it. So make sure where you end up going is where you want to go, and don't go somewhere where you'll regret it in the future. Because I do know of some students who go to schools because of peer pressure or pressure from the teachers or pressure from the parents, they end up not liking it and not doing as well as they may have at another institution. So always do what is going to end up being the best for your educational goals. Take your parents' consideration into account, or take your parents' advice into consideration, and you will end up at a place that it makes everyone happy.
Okay, thank you. And how did you develop your leadership in high school?
Leadership in high school was definitely a hands-on thing. You just kind of have to learn from other people above you, and eventually work your way up into roles where you can learn about leadership, kind of hands-on. You can't really just take a class on leadership and be like, oh yeah, I'm a leader the next day, right? What you have to do is pretty much go into situations where you might be taking on small leadership roles, eventually working their way up into bigger leadership roles, right? At the very beginning, when I started Just Talk, for example, I was only, it was just myself with 8 students. The next year, it was myself with a friend and 8 students. And then the next year, it was, I was managing a team of 6 people. Next year, I was managing a team of 20. Year after, and until now I'm managing a team of around 80 instructors and 80 students. So you'll grow and you'll learn how to develop your leadership skills through that.
Okay. Is it possible that a student who got a B in one class and A in all other classes can get into Stanford?
That is 100% yes, you can. There's many students getting into top tier colleges who don't have perfect scores. I would say at least probably 50% or less of students here at Stanford have had perfect transcripts, right? Probably even a lot less than have perfect transcripts. You are allowed to mess up sometimes. Yes, you can get a B here and there. Yes, you can get lower scores than just A's, right? Colleges know that students are learning. Students are making mistakes. They're not just out there to be like, oh, 1B, you're out of here, right? They're looking at everything as a whole. If you're doing well in all your other classes, if you're doing well in extracurriculars, you're doing solid everything else, then you're definitely putting yourself in a position to succeed and eventually get into a top college of your choice.
Okay, and what are the courses that prepared you the most for Stanford?
All right. The number one course that I'd say was most helpful for me throughout high school and starting out in college was my AP World History course that I took in sophomore year. That course was the first AP that I've ever taken, and it was also one of the most difficult. That was probably because I never really had the opportunity to manage my time as much as I needed to in that course. That course, I was constantly bombarded with essays, quizzes, tests, homework, whatever. There's a lot in that course, but that really taught me how to manage my time wisely, balancing everything in my tests, in my quizzes, homework, and putting them in calendars and actually following that and studying. And that has carried on through high school and now into college, where I'm constantly using my calendar, using my planner to do the work that I need to do and on time.
Okay, and how did you grow your team and recruit new members, and what approach did you take?
All right, so my program is run off of the work of high school students. So as a club at my high school, Just Talk was recruiting students at club days, stuff like that. And then at other schools, at our other divisions, that's where we recruited instructors from. Was just through schools and having them work with us as a student organization.
Yeah, and how did you make time for yourself every day?
Okay, making time for myself, again, it's the time management thing. Oftentimes I would just give myself maybe 10, 30 minutes of the day to just decompress, because it's a lot of work. You're up for 12, 14, 16 hours a day, 18 hours a day. And a lot of that you're doing work, right? Taking 20, 30 minutes out of your day isn't going to make that much of a difference if you just try to decompress before you get back into work. So manage your time wisely, putting everything in the calendar, working efficiently, as I've mentioned multiple times already. But give yourself time and just relax a little bit sometimes. That's might be more helpful than just grinding for the 20 minutes on another assignment.
Okay, and I think someone asked to see like the first two slides. Could you please like go back?
First two slides?
Yeah.
First two slides on, what was it?
I think, yeah, this one and the next one maybe.
These two? Okay. And these are here. All right, can I move on to the next slide?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, and while we're doing this, are there any other questions that you have?
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, so I would like to thank you for spending your time with us tonight. And I would also like to thank the parents and the students for participating in this event. And the Bolo Club organizes reading clubs, current event discussions, and free seminars such as this one. So please watch our flyer and join us for the next event if you're interested. Good night, everyone. You can just leave.
And before you do that, though, I do have a small plug. So in terms of I do have a college admission consultant business, but what that means is it's not like your traditional college counseling business, right? What we're doing is as you can see here, we provide step-by-step assistance through our entire application process, almost like a mentor through the process. I will look at your high school career planning, talk to you about our own experiences. We can provide application review, or if you want more specific help, we can do essay editing, idea sessions, drafting, final review, and interview preparation as well. We come up with personalized questions about specific schools and give you interview tips on specific schools. And all of this is done with one-on-one with students from Stanford and Harvard to help you get to the best place you need. So that's one-on-one guidance, and we do it for relatively cheap compared to other college application programs. And so we're over 85% more affordable based on average prices. And if you would take a look at that, and I can send you more information on that if you just send me an email, and that's right here, ethuang@stanford.edu. Just take a look at that, jot it down, send me an email, whatever, and I'll send you some more information on that if you're interested.
Okay, so thank you. And I guess we can just wrap up because we already went over the questions, right?
Yeah, all right, good. So, and we're good with that. All right, thank you everyone for coming tonight and listening to me
Thank you
talk.
for having us.